Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of not just the Locked On Padres podcast, but also the Locked On Pirates podcast, your team every day for Tuesday, August 6th. I am one of your hosts, Javier Reyes, the one speaking right now at Javapeno, Javiipeno on Twitter, the best handle in the game. And I'm being joined by my co-host of the day, the legend from the Locked On Pirates podcast, and his handle I think suits him very well at MVP_Ethan on Twitter. It is Ethan Smith, longtime podcast guest. Sir, how are you?
Good. It has been way too long, man. I think the last time that we did this was like early last year, because unlike this year, the Pirates and Padres played each other early last year. So it was kind of high bye, and then that was it. We didn't really talk to each other now for probably, I wouldn't say that long, a calendar year. I feel like we've talked in between then, but very interesting that this is the first time they meet this year.
Yes, exactly. And finally, dare I say, and this could come off as a bit of an insult, and I mean it in no way whatsoever, but it feels like you have the juice this year. Ethan has been a member of the Sad Boys of Locked On for a very long time. For those unfamiliar with the Sad Boys group, it is people who are fans of the teams that simply do not have all that much going on. But it does seem like, Ethan, you have a lot more going on this year, because both of these teams are still in the wild card race, and we're going to be previewing not just the pitching matchups and storylines, but also doing a little bit of Skenes versus Marill Rookie of the Year talk for you guys, because we know that's what y'all come here for. We know. We watch the numbers. You guys like conflict. That's what you do out here. All right. That's sports. But today's episode, guys, firstly, is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. Something for everyone, every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And to get started with this, man, let's just talk about it. What are the kind of vibes going on for the Pirates right now? Because it does feel like this is the first time in a while that there's been just a lot of optimism. And it hasn't just been, oh, wow, Javier Reyes might be good. Instead, there's been a lot of good players who perform. Bryan Reynolds is having a pretty good season. Tell us what's going on.
Well, this time last week, a lot of people were very skeptical of what was going on, because Ben Cherington wanted to do his best Houdini act and disappear for pretty much the entire trade deadline until the last hour, and gets Brian De La Cruz and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, two guys that, well, the first one being a guy that I kind of assumed they would just go and get after they lost out on Jazz Chisholm. The second one kind of surprised me in IKF. So that gave us a clear indication, okay, they want to build into this team a little bit. Now, is it what the Padres are doing? No. Nobody can do what the Padres do at the trade deadline every year. It's just impossible to replicate. You come off of 3 series now where I think you can walk away from all 3 of those series, 2 of them against the Arizona Diamondbacks, so you guys are very familiar with. And I think you can walk away from all 3 of those series and say you should have won all 3, and you lost the 2 that arguably meant the most. They did beat Houston there in the middle, and rightfully probably should have swept Houston. And that was kind of the takeaway from this entire past week, is you come out of the trade deadline, you're about 2.5 back. Now you sit 4 back at the time of recording, and you took 2 really tough series losses to the Arizona Diamondbacks. This past weekend, I think, was the more frustrating one. 1, seeing that it was at home. 2, you come back from trailing 6-0 on Friday after they broke the record for the most total bases in the first 4 batters of a game after hitting 3 home runs off Luis Ortiz, who Padres fans will see in the series. And then the Sunday game, you have Paul Skenes going, you're up 4-0, and then Colin Holderman, who has just had a plethora of issues over the past week. I mean, I was making a case for him to be an all-star before the season began, or before the all-star break came, and now he's given up 8 earned runs in the past week. So it's a little weird, because a lot of Pirates fans, even really including myself, are just getting used to competitive baseball in August again. Like, usually by this point, you mentioned the Sad Boys Club. Usually it's like, okay, well, Santana's gone, Anderson's gone, Quintana's gone. Maybe we'll see O'Neill Cruz come up, or maybe we'll see somebody come up. It's not really the vibe anymore. It's kind of, hey, we're competing for the first time in probably 6 or 7 years. Let's see what they can do. And my takeaway from all of it, they're going to have to beat teams like Arizona. They're going to have to beat teams like San Diego. They're going to have to beat teams that are right there with them in this race, including St. Louis and San Francisco and Cincinnati and all these other teams. And that's just the vibe right now. And a lot of these guys haven't been there to experience this yet. So I'm kind of happy it happened, and it is happening, because I feel like it's just going to propel them through, one, the rest of this year, and two, 2025.
Yeah, absolutely. And right now, the Pirates standing at an imposing 56 and 55. They are 4 games back of a wild card spot behind
The most
Atlanta.
500 team you'll ever meet, Javi.
Yeah, the most 500 team. And then you've got, of course, the Mets above them at 59 wins, and then you've got the Braves, Padres, and Diamondbacks all with the wild card spots right now. The Padres are in a position right now compared to the Pirates where it's just kind of, get the job done. In a lot of ways. Obviously, as you just alluded to, they've always had a big deadline. I literally only think that they've had one off season where AJ Preller didn't do something crazy in free agency or the trade deadline. I think it was prior to 2022. They barely did anything that year. I think their biggest thing was Nick Martinez, if I'm not mistaken. Feel free, folks in the comments, to correct me. But they always do something. And this year they gave up a lot of assets and they acquired some big time bullpen arms to help them out, which is going to be important because this is a team that we don't know exactly what we're going to be getting out of the starting pitching in terms of the, 3, 4, and 5 spots. Matt Waldron has been fantastic for this team. Ethan, you might have heard of the man, the knuckleball legend that he is. How long is that going to last? How much can you count on Yu Darvish or Joe Musgrove returning? Martin Perez, he's been our guy, you know what I mean, for a long time, in the sense that, not a long time, actually. I don't know why I use that phrase, but he had a really, really good first start that was encouraging. So, Padres are hoping that their bullpen is going to be able to carry them from some of their shortcomings. But otherwise, I think the biggest thing here is the offense. It's going to be the offense versus the Pirates pitching, which has been significantly better than in years past. This is not your same Quintana, Chris Archer Pirates. You know what I mean? This is a team that not only has Skenes, not only has the Jared Jones, but has just quality, decent starters that seem to give them a chance every time. And when you've got like a defender like Brian Hayes out there, among others, it makes for a pretty decent defensive team. So I think it's going to be an interesting test for the Padres. I can't wait, man. I think this is going to be fun. And I think that the Padres, the big thing about this is, of course, they need to just avoid one thing that they've been doing a lot this year. They get really bad. They get swept at the worst times. This is one thing that has been a common theme for them. I know they're 61 and 52. They have bucked that trend recently. This might shock you, Ethan. They finally beat the Rockies, right? Finally,
wow.
One of the
they've
struggled.
I was afraid to ask you because I know the Rockies are kind of like the thorn in the Padres side that just doesn't go away.
And it hasn't just been this year. That's the key. This has been going on for multiple years. So usually, there's all these teams. The Pirates, I bet you one year were like 8-2 against the Dodgers or some nonsense, right? But no, this has been multiple years of just suffering against this team that isn't very good. But hopefully they've bucked that trend, and we're going to see how the rest of this series plays out. We're going to talk about some of the players, some of the underrated players on the Pirates, and perhaps some of the underrated players on the Padres in just a second, as well as the Skenes versus Marill conversation that you guys, I assure you, want to hear. This is going to be fun. But first, I want to take a second, guys, to talk to you about one of our sponsors for today's show, and that is the good folks over at Supply House. We love Supply House here on Locked On Padres and Locked On Pirates. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. It is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. That's right, coast to coast. Need help with an order? You can also get support and industry-friendly leading service from the friendliest folks out there to talk to a person real time. No robo people. Don't worry about that. Pros in the skilled trades can also get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free TradeMaster program. Every TradeMaster gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. So join the thousands of pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. Real people, real service with Supply House. Go check it out. And just like that, we are back, everybody, thriving and vibing on the Locked On Padres and Pirates crossover extravaganza for Tuesday, August 6th. Ethan, should we just get to it? Should we talk about Marill and Skenes?
Sure, why not? Because I feel like I can fill up an entire show talking about these guys. And before we do that, by the way, as you know, Javi, I moved up to PA a couple months ago. I want to say hopefully everybody down in Savannah, where I was living the last 7 years, is okay with Hurricane Debbie and everything. Hopefully everybody in Florida is okay. Hopefully everybody even in Charleston, South Carolina, any part of the Southeast that was affected by it. Hope yins are doing okay and able to tune into this show today if you happen to be a Padres or a Pirates fan down south, which would be kind of fun. That'd be actually really fun.
Just that would be really fun. Yeah.
That way I'm not the only one.
Yeah. Anyways. Exactly. But yes, agreed with Ethan. Hope everybody is staying safe in these very tough times. But to get out to the to Skenes versus Marill. First of all, Skenes obviously one of the biggest stories in all of baseball this year. Did you ever think that was going to happen? Did you ever think that a Pirates player not only would be this dominant so quickly? Paul Skenes was a top-level draft pick. Don't get me wrong. He was a top-level prospect for a long time. But did you expect it to be like as crazy as it's become, where he's starting the All-Star game, where he's leading MLB Instagram posts and all that stuff? What were your thoughts on Skenes?
Based off of the things that I heard before the season, I didn't expect to see him until June, maybe even July. Just because, I mean, when you look at last year, you have people say, well, he pitched last year. The guy threw like 16 innings in the minor leagues and then got shut down immediately because his arm was basically a noodle after pitching at LSU.
Mm-hmm.
It happens. You go into this year and you saw him in the futures game, or not the futures game, the whatever they were calling it when they played Baltimore in spring training. It was an awesome event. I just don't remember what they call it. Spring breakout. That's what it was. And you saw him a couple times in spring, and it was almost funny because Paul Skenes was the talk of the town all offseason, and then Jared Jones kind of overtook him as far as like making the roster out of spring, became a real conversation, and it eventually happened. Jared Jones on the shelf right now, but he should be back here pretty soon. And what's interesting is when I first saw that Skenes was getting called up, there was two things I did. One, I got my tickets immediately. And two,
of course,
I wondered, one, why they didn't just do it out of spring at that point, because I didn't know how much he could truly learn at AAA Indianapolis in a month and a half. But whatever they did right. Javi. I mean, seriously, the guy has been something that Pirates fans, young and old, have never seen. I mean, the only guy I even think recently that even compares to this kind of hype pitching wise is Garrett Cole. And not Garrett Cole was not this. Nobody was this at all. I mean, they talk about it on almost every pregame show that he's breaking records that are 100 years old or 80 years ago. And there's a lot of good players that he's alongside too. And we talk about, Skenes versus Marill and Skenes versus whoever as far as rookies are concerned. And it's no slight to these guys at all. I said this to you before we started recording. Jackson Merrill is a phenomenal baseball player and will be a phenomenal baseball player for a very long time. But Paul Skenes is cementing himself in the Cy Young conversation at the age of 22 in his first 14 starts. And in those first 14 starts, he has a grand total of 1 loss. And guess who was there to see it? Me. Because I'm great, and I'm 1-2 in games I go to when Skenes pitches. Just want to throw that out there. But as far as it's concerned, I think this is great for baseball overall. You mentioned that he's been a very big player of story as far as MLB is concerned. Having this kind of guy in a smaller market like Pittsburgh, I think, is just a slam dunk. I think starting next year, you're going to start to see the Pirates on more Sunday night baseball games or TBS or Fox just because Skenes is pitching. I mean, I think they'll be on MLB Network a lot more, and that's just in turn going to help the team as well. So I think this is just a slam dunk for them.
Yeah, and I mean, the stats kind of speak for themselves. Just the, your main sort of stats. This guy has a 32.3% strikeout rate with only a 5.7% walk rate. Ground ball rate is pretty good too. I'm sorry.
He has closer numbers.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, seriously.
He's a starter and has closer numbers.
And he's a guy who could be in the 7th inning still notching up to 100 if he wants to, which is the craziest part. And that's usually what you see out of those big time sort of relievers. FIP, if you're a big person of the, expected stats, it's also very, very good for Paul Skenes at 2.69, 1.99 ERA so far. The guy's basically been unhittable, unless I guess you Shohei Ohtani. You know what I mean? Like, I guess that's the only person who can hit this guy pretty well, which is like,
or Yandy Diaz.
Oh, yes, Yadi Diaz. You got to love Yadi Diaz, of course.
Or
big
Jared
time
Kelenic. That happened twice in a row with Jared Kelenic and Yandy Diaz. It was the funniest thing ever. And then he just mowed down everybody else the rest of the game. Both times. It was great.
Absolutely. So here's the thing. And I talked about this a little bit on my show because I did get a question about Marill versus Skenes. And I will say that there are some things in favor of Marill. For number one, he's a position player. He's playing every day. Number two, I think it's an impressive story that not only he has been, really solid this year, and he's a guy that has incredible bat to ball skills that you just don't see very often from a rookie. He just does not swing and miss all that often. Changing positions to an unfamiliar position in center field, an important one, and to not just be, okay there, but be more than okay. Occasionally flashing the leather, robbing the aforementioned Ohtani of an extra base hit was one of his highlights early on. Even if he isn't, Trent Grisham, Gold Glove, type of level caliber defender yet, he's been very, very good. But to me, it's as simple as just I get a stat every single time this guy starts that you don't see. It's like, hey, best strikeout rate in first 10 starts since Jacob deGrom. You know what I mean? Since Roger Clemens, since Garrett Cole, you know what I mean? Like there's always, so for me, I don't want to dock him points just because he doesn't play every day, because to me, this guy has been transformative in more than one way. He's given hope back to Pittsburgh. So even if you want to use your narratives and your kind of other sort of things, right? Which I like to do when we're talking about baseball. I don't like to just look up baseball reference stuff all the time. Skenes has transformed the Pittsburgh Pirates. And like you said, they're going to get Sunday night games because of this. And for him to stand out and shine in the spotlight, I think says a lot. And it's not just a good regular, rookie pitcher. This is not just your, wow, really solid season from Alek Manoah. You know what I mean? Alek Manoah, just a fun throwback, was really good his rookie year. I know he fell off after that. But Skenes has just been able to miss so many bats. He's amazing to watch. So I am a believer in Paul Skenes being the rookie of the year, unless something were to change, of course. We still have plenty of time left, right? Like, let's not forget that. We still got time left if Jackson Merrill starts hitting for more power, potentially, if Skenes does have some sort of regression, because in fairness, hasn't been playing and pitching as much as a Jackson Merrill. So it's not impossible that this could change. I think Merrill's in the conversation, but if it were to end today, I'm of the belief that it is Paul Skenes, and I don't care if that means that I'm a traitor to the Padres faithful.
I do have a fun question for you, though. Does Skenes get the unanimous vote?
No, I don't think so. Because I think by the time we get to the end, Marill will still be having a good season. Someone's going to be like, I prefer position player. There's going to be someone who's like position player over pitcher. I think it's not going to be all that close if it keeps going the way that it's going, but I don't think we get unanimous. But it's hard to say what's going to be more important, the glitz and glamour, and they're just not going to be able to ignore, like, we got to go Skenes, or is there going to be some old head, some traditionalist who's like, love the guy, but I have to go position player every time? Maybe that's what we're due for. I guess we'll find out at the end of the year. Unfortunately, we will not be seeing, though, I believe, Paul Skenes in this series, which is very, very sad. But for Padres fans, it may be very, very good, because that is one thing they would not like, is someone to stymie their offense. Ethan, can you tell us about some of the offensive doodads going on in Pittsburgh? Because I think that this is a team that, not a lot of people are familiar with a lot of their, core sort of players.
Well, you look at Brian Reynolds. One of my biggest shows ever was with Mr. Javi over here. We're discussing Brian Reynolds to San Diego potentially happening. Never happened, obviously, but it's fine. Brian Reynolds has been otherworldly this year. He usually always has a big June. That big June just transferred into July and has somewhat transferred into August. And then you look at O'Neal Cruz. I mean, he's been kind of an enigma this year. He's second in all of baseball in errors, but he's also had a very solid offensive season. He's been very good since the All-Star break left. He's been a guy that you look at and you say, okay, well, O'Neal Cruz is a 6'7" demigod who can literally hit the ball 450 feet if he wants to. And outside of that, I mean, you have Isaiah Kiner-Falefa here now, who is chasing a batting title in the American League. He already had a double and a triple. The first time he did that ever in his storied career on Sunday. Then you have Brian De La Cruz, a guy from Miami that can hit for a ton of power. Rowdy Tellez was as good as gone after May. All of a sudden has been a very good player offensively for this team. But if I have to be honest with myself, this offense is usually what holds this team back. I mean, truthfully, the pitching has been very good, but it's very hard to win every single game 2-1 or 3-2. So I always ask them to get 4 runs. I think 4 runs is more than enough with this pitching staff that they currently have. Now with Falter and Gonzalez can get a little interesting there, and we'll talk about that in the final part of today's show. But just caution yourself, Padres fans, to know that there are some weapons on this offense, but overall, as a whole, it is still an offense that has its issues.
Yeah, it seems like it. You know, Brian Reynolds leading the team in WRC plus at 135. He's got 19 home runs, 289, 358, 487 slash line. Just a really solid player. I've often made fun of Brian Reynolds on my show just because I don't understand. Not made fun of. Well, yeah, made fun of. Number one, I don't understand the whole Soto-like package nonsense that was getting put out there not too long ago. And number two, most importantly, this is just a me thing. I have nothing against you, Mr. Brian Reynolds. This is just me. Ethan, I was getting so annoyed by how many trade reports and rumors with this guy. It was like 2 years worth of like, I'm not exaggerating. Every other month, oh, Brian Reynolds trade candidate, Brian Reynolds trade candidate. Oh, he trade requested again, and you were one of those people, by the way, that were saying he's not getting traded. But go ahead.
Yeah, and it's very funny that you say that as we speak, with the Pittsburgh Steelers right now kind of doing the exact same thing, just with a player that's not on their roster. Sorry to Christopher Carter of Locked On Steelers that he has to keep talking about that nonsense, because that's what it is it's nonsense. It's not going to happen, but fans will tell you it will. And that was kind of the thing, and it was really funny before we get to the final part of today's show. A lot of Pirates fans wanted Luis Robert and were complaining that the price was so high. I said, we have no room to talk. Not at all. No room at all. Because the White Sox did the exact same thing that we were doing with Reynolds, because he's a controllable outfielder that was young at the time, about the same age as Reynolds when all this was going on. And they said, okay, if you want him, give us a king's ransom for him. Nobody would do it. That's why the Pirates did that. Because you remember that Seattle package oh boy, if that would have happened now, it would have been very interesting. But hey, I mean, I remember I was talking about getting Louis Campusano because he's my buddy.
I remember that.
A no-hitter. I have to always throw that in there with Locked On Padres crossovers. I used to play with Louis Campusano, Padres fans. He's an awesome kid.
Love that. Love that very much. And believe me, the Campusano Hive appreciates you and your bravery very much.
Nice.
Before we get to the final part of this podcast, we just talk about a couple more things, as well as the pitching matchups. Got to talk to you all about one of our classic OGs, FanDuel. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But with Team USA, with baseball only, you don't got the WNBA on, you don't have NHL on, you don't have NBA on, NFL's not here. People might be wondering, well, what the heck do I do? Well, don't worry. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Go and check that diggity dog out, man. Let's go. And just like that, as Ethan catches his baseball, we are back thriving and vibing here at the Locked On Padres and Locked On Pirates crossover extravaganza. Look, this is going to be an interesting series. I will say also O'Neal Cruz. I don't think you have talked about too much, but I do think that Cruz is going to be interesting. This is a guy who hits for a lot of power. His isolated power mark at 200 is crazy, but he does strike out a lot. So he seems like a raw prospect type, but I think that you might see some highlights from him. And I think depending on how the Padres pitching goes, even though it does seem they have some of their best pitchers ready for this series, that will be one to look on, especially for off-speed pitches. But let's talk about this pitching matchups, Ethan. The first game of this series tonight, we've got ourselves a dynamite one. We've got Dylan Cease coming off of his great stretch where he's got a 0.33 ERA over his last 4 starts. He threw the no-hitter, and he's going up against Bailey Falter. Oh, I'm a little bit unfamiliar with this fellow, but it doesn't seem like his numbers are all that bad. What can you tell us, good Ethan?
Well, Bailey Falter was kind of the redheaded stepchild of this rotation going into this year, because last year he was just not good at all. You had Paul Skenes on the way, you had Jared Jones, and people were like, well, it'll be easy. Just DFA Falter and then bring up Skenes. Then Bailey Falter had a phenomenal start to the year, dealt with an injury in the middle part, but yeah, he's been good. I mean, 95 innings, 3.95 ERA, 64 Ks, 28 walks, the whip at a 1.19. You'll take that from your fourth or fifth starter. I mean, if that's your fourth or fifth starter in your rotation, you're doing something right. And when you look at Dylan Cease, the dude's insane. I mean, this is a Pirates team that strikes out a good bit. This is a guy that strikes out a lot of guys. So naturally, the Pirates will probably score 7 runs against them, because baseball doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, that's what I always say. And then Bailey Falter will in turn give up 8 runs, and the Padres will win 8-7. If that happens, folks, come back to the show and let me know so I can go play the lottery.
Absolutely.
But in all seriousness, I mean, obviously Dylan Cease is a phenomenal pitcher. I knew right upon the Padres getting him. I kind of expected the Padres to get him whenever all those trade rumors were kind of hyping up, because that was such an AJ Preller move. It really was. Like, it's like, oh yeah, let me just go make this move real quick. And then you move on to, I mean, you look at tomorrow on Wednesday, Michael King in his own right, overshadowed by Dylan Cease, but having his own very strong season. I mean, 144 Ks, 45 walks, and a 3.26 ERA, a lesser ERA than Cease in about 12 less innings, but still in his own right, very good. Marco Gonzalez just getting into, I believe, like his 5th start of the year next year. He had a long injury that kept him out for a while. So a very interesting series, because we're the only team in this series throwing lefties, which I found very interesting, but maybe that's just how your rotation shakes out. But yeah, you guys kind of avoid the big guys in Keller and Skenes in this one. They pitched over the weekend. So you may see them next week, but you avoid them in this series, Avi.
Absolutely. But here's the thing, Ethan. That's where you brought up lefties. That's the big thing, which is why this Padres series, despite the fact that the Pirates offense is definitely not even close to how high volume the Padres offense has been, especially considering that the Padres offense has been hitting in situational this year with getting sac flies, with driving in runs. Jurickson Profar has been quite literally one of the most clutch players in baseball. I still think his OPS is like 1,700 or something like that in high leverage situations. You have all that, but they're kryptonite. They are not very good against hitting lefties. This has been a problem all year, in which they've made your Tyler Andersons. They've made all of your, this isn't even like the best lefties, but just average ones. It does not matter who. They've gotten shut down by a lot of these guys. Patrick Corbin, Ethan, pitched pretty decently against them the last time they were up. So this is a team that really struggles against lefties. This is not an easy series. The good news is the Padres do have the advantage of facing their best starters, right? We just talked about that first one, Michael King versus Marco Gonzalez, clearly in favor of Michael King. And then Randy Vasquez versus Luis L. Ortiz. That's the only one that's kind of like not great, right? We don't know exactly what we're getting out of Randy Vasquez, but even still, you at least do have the bullpen too. So it does seem like in this series, they have the pitching advantage, but oh man, Ethan, let me tell you, this team is not very good against lefties, and they've made a lot of below average folks, and in some cases atrocious pitchers like a Patrick Corbin look better. So this series is by all means very much wide open. Anyone can win it. And when you look at the Padres' tendencies to, disappoint, it's still there. Yes, they beat the Rockies. Yes, they've been good as of late, but a lot of this year has been them losing to teams that they shouldn't lose to in dramatic fashion, not just losing 2-3 and they're all close games. No, getting swept and all of a sudden it's 5-1 and you're like, what the heck happened here? Why are you getting swept by the Angels without Mike Trout? Stuff like that. So it's still going to be interesting to follow. I will say, and Luis Campusano, your boy, maybe he'll make an appearance this series, but I will say for Pirates fans, in terms of the under-the-radar guys, pay attention to Donovan Solano and Kyle Higashioka. Donovan Solano, every year, we're always like, how did nobody sign that guy? That's Donovan Solano. And this is a Padres team and organization that has had a bad penchant for bringing in these older players and whatnot, but they usually bring in older players that have been washed up. Your Robinson Canoes, your Matt Carpenter, your Nelson Cruzes. Donovan Solano's last season, he was still hitting the ball and drawing walks. yeah, he's not O'Neal Cruz levels of power, but it was very weird that they were able to just kind of pick him off the scrap heap. And he's not only hit a walk-off for the team before, but he's been excellent this year. Just a solid batting average, on base sort of player on the season. Let me see if I have his numbers. He's got a 125 WRC plus. He's hitting 300, 355 on base. That's a hitter right there. And he's been much better than Luis Arraez in that regard, I think, when it comes to just pure hitting. And then Kyle Higashioka, he's the one that's a little bit weird. K. Pizarro no longer being the starting catcher. Instead, it has been all Higgy, because not just because of the defensive differences, but Higashioka, 124 WRC plus this year. He hits for power. And yes, he's going to strike out a lot. He's not getting you a lot of signals. He's not even going to put together a great at bat. But if you're just a decent defensive catcher and you give them this, that's kind of all you can hope for out of your catchers sometimes. So by catcher standards, he's better. And by regular standards, as mentioned, with the 124 WRC plus, he's been great. 1.6 WAR on the season as well. So those are two players to watch out for, I think, for the Pirates. Otherwise, yeah, Jurickson Profar, you know, you've got him, you've got Manny Machado. Xander Bogaerts has been playing a lot better lately. So the vibes are good for the Padres, but those lefties, man, my Lord. Yeah.
Well, and on top of this, don't forget a Pirates trade deadline acquisition, Colorado Rockies left-hander Jalen Beeks. Kind of like a double whammy for the Padres if they see him in this one. Yeah, it'll be an interesting series, Javi. I think it's going to be fun, and it's almost like crazy that they're doing the same thing with the Padres they just did with Arizona. It's just like, okay, we'll play you guys once, have a series in between, play you guys again later. It's
exactly
literally the same time next week.
Exactly. So hopefully the Padres' good vibes could continue, and we'll have to see, though. I'm really excited to see how these matchups go down, and I know you are too. Ethan, before we get out of here, do you have anything you'd like to plug for the good people of Locked On Pirates and Locked On Padres?
Well, if you want to check out a series preview that I wrote for this series, go to SteelCityPirates.com. You can find that there. Has all the pitching matchups, players to watch for, players that are hot and cold. So Machado on there, Jake Cronenworth mentioned on there as well. And you get a lot of different things. I mean, obviously follow me where you find Javi's show, find the show on YouTube and all your audio platforms. Same old gist, you know. That's really it. Not much else going on.
Well said. Not much else going on, indeed. But what is going on is awesome. You can check out my other baseball-related work over at justbaseball.com, where I recently wrote about Matt Waldron and his amazing season that he's been having so far and how every team could use a fellow like him. Also, go check out my podcast, Baseball versus the World, which is about evergreen, fun baseball topics. Maybe even Ethan will be a guest in the future. We'll have to see. We'll have to see, folks. But until that next time, stay... What's a good P word that's like positive? Stay positive, Pirates?
Yeah, stay positive. There you go.
Stay positive, my Pirates brethren, and stay faithful, my Fire Faithful homies. Until next time, take care.